He stayed there with me to dinner. If I were to say willingly, I should not half express how readily and gaily. He went into Mr. Bacchus's room like light and air, brightening and refreshing it as if he were healthy weather. There was no noise, no effort, no consciousness in anything he did, but in everything an indescribable lightness, a seeming impossibility of doing anything else or doing anything better, which was so graceful, so natural and agreeable, that it overcomes me, even now, in the remembrance. We made merry in the little parlour, where the Book of Martyrs, unthumbed since my time, was laid out upon the desks as of old, and where I now turned over its terrific pictures, remembering the old sensations they had awakened, but not feeling them. When Peggotty spoke of what she called my room, and of its being ready for me at night, and of her hoping I would occupy it before I could so much as look at Steerforth hesitating, he was possessed of the whole case. "Of course," he said, "you'll sleep here while we stay, and I shall sleep at the hotel." "But to bring you so far," I returned, "and to separate, seems bad companionship, Steerforth." "Why, in the name of heaven, where do you naturally belong?" he said. "What is seems compared to that?" It was settled at once. He maintained all his delightful qualities to the last, until we started forth at 8 o'clock for Mr. Peggotty's boat. Indeed, they were more and more brightly exhibited as the hours went on, for I thought even then, and I have no doubt now, that the consciousness of success in his determination to please inspired him with a new delicacy of perception, and made it, subtle as it was, more easy to him. If anyone had told me then that all this was a brilliant game, played for the excitement of the moment, for the employment of high spirits, in the thoughtless love of superiority, in a mere wasteful, careless course of winning what was worthless to him, and next minute thrown away, I say, if anyone had told me such a lie that night, I wonder in what manner of receiving it my indignation would have found a vent. Probably only in an increase, had that been possible, of the romantic feelings of fidelity and friendship with which I walked beside him, over the dark, wintry sands towards the old boat. The wind sighing around us even more mournfully than it had sighed and moaned upon the night when I first darkened Mr. Peggotty's door. "This is a wild kind of place, Steerforth, is it not?" "Dismal enough in the dark," he said, "and the sea roars as if it were hungry for us. Is that the boat, where I see a light yonder?" "That's the boat," said I. "And it's the same I saw this morning," he returned. "I came straight to it, by instinct, I suppose." We said no more as we approached the light, but made softly for the door. I laid my hand upon the latch, and whispering Steerforth to keep close to me, went in. A murmur of voices had been audible on the outside, and, at the moment of our entrance, a clapping of hands, which latter noise I was surprised to see, proceeded from the generally disconsolate Mrs. Gummidge. But Mrs. Gummidge was not the only person there who was unusually excited. Mr. Peggotty, his face lighted up with uncommon satisfaction, and laughing with all his might, held his rough arms wide open, as if for little Emily to run into them. Ham, with a mixed expression in his face of admiration, exultation, and a lumbering sort of bashfulness that sat upon him very well, held little Emily by the hand, as if he were presenting her to Mr. Peggotty. Little Emily herself, blushing and shy, but delighted with Mr. Peggotty's delight, as her joyous eyes expressed, was stopped by our entrance, for she saw us first, in the very act of springing from Ham to nestle in Mr. Peggotty's embrace. In the first glimpse we had of them all, and at the moment of our passing from the dark cold night into the warm light room, this was the way in which we were all employed. Mrs. Gummidge in the background, clapping her hands like a madwoman. The little picture was so instantaneously dissolved by our going in that one might have doubted whether it had ever been. I was in the midst of the astonished family, face to face with Mr. Peggotty, and holding out my hand to him, when Ham shouted, "Mas'r Davy! It's Mas'r Davy!" In a moment we were all shaking hands with one another, and asking one another how we did, and telling one another how glad we were to meet, and all talking at once. Mr. Peggotty was so proud and overjoyed to see us that he did not know what to say or do, but kept over and over again shaking hands with me, and then with Steerforth, and then with me, and then ruffling his shaggy hair all over his head, and laughing with such glee and triumph that it was a treat to see him. "Why, that you two gentlemen growed, should come to this here roof tonight, of all nights in my life," said Mr. Peggotty. "Is such a thing as never happened before, I do rightly believe. Emily, my darling, come here, my little witch. There's Mas'r Davy's friend, my dear. There's the gentleman as you've heard on, Emily. He comes to see you, along with Mas'r Davy, on the brightest night of your uncle's life as ever was or will be. Gorm the t'other one, and hurrah for it." After delivering this speech, all in a breath, and with extraordinary animation and pleasure, Mr. Peggotty put one of his large hands rapturously on each side of his niece's face, and kissing it a dozen times, laid it with a gentle pride and love upon his broad chest, and patted it as if his hand had been a lady's. Then he let her go, and, as she ran into the little chamber where I used to sleep, looked round upon us, quite hot and out of breath with his uncommon satisfaction. "If you two gentlemen growed now, and such gentlemen," said Mr. Peggotty. So there," cried Ham. "Well said, so there, Mas'r Davy Board, gentlemen growed, so there." "If you two gentlemen growed," said Mr. Peggotty, "don't excuse me for being in a state of mind when you understand matters. I'll arsk for your pardon. Emily, my dear, she knows I'm a-going to tell." Here his delight broke out again, "and has made off. Would you be so good as look after her mother for a minute? Mrs. Gummidge nodded and disappeared. If this ain't," said Mr. Peggotty, sitting down among us by the fire, "the brightest night of my life. I'm a shellfish, biled too, and more I can't say. This here little Emily, sir," in a low voice to Steerforth, "her as you see a blushing here just now." Steerforth only nodded, but with such a pleased expression of interest and of participation in Mr. Peggotty's feelings that the latter answered him as if he had spoken. "To be sure," said Mr. Peggotty, "that's her, and so she is. Thank ye, sir." Ham nodded to me several times as if he would have said so too. "This here little Emily of ours," said Mr. Peggotty, "has been in our house what I suppose, I'm an ignorant man, but that's my belief, no one but a little bright-eyed creature can be in a house. She ain't my child, I never had one, but I couldn't love her more. You understand? I couldn't do it." "I quite understand," said Steerforth. "I know you do, sir," returned Mr. Peggotty, "and thank ye again, Mas'r Davy. He can remember what she was. You may judge for your own self what she is, but neither of you can't fully know what she has been, is, and will be, to my love and art." "I am rough, sir," said Mr. Peggotty. "I am rough as a sea porcupine, but no one, unless mayhap it is a woman, can know, I think, what our little Emily is to me. And betwixt ourselves," sinking his voice lower yet, "that woman's name ain't Mrs. Gummidge neither, though she has a world of merits." Mr. Peggotty ruffled his hair again with both hands as a further preparation for what he was going to say, and went on with a hand upon each of his knees. "There was a certain person as had knowed our Emily from the time when her father was drowned, as had seen her constant, when a baby, when a young girl, when a woman. Not much of a person to look at, he warn't, said Mr. Peggotty. Something of my own build, rough, a good deal o' soul, Wester in him, very sot, but, on the whole, a honest sort of a chap, with his art in the right place. I thought I had never seen Ham grin to anything like the extent to which he sat grinning at us now. What does this here blessed tarpaulin go and do? Said Mr. Peggotty, with his face one high noon of enjoyment. But he loses that there art of his to our little Emily. He follows her about to make. He makes himself a sort of servant to her. He loses in a great measure his relish for his victuals, and, in the long run, he makes it clear to me what's amiss. Now I could wish myself, you see, that our little Emily was in a fair way of being married. I could wish to see her, at all events, under articles to a honest man as had a right to defend her. I don't know how long I may live, or how soon I may die, but I know that if I was capsized any night in a gale of wind in Yarmouth roads here, and was to see the town lights shining for the last time over the rollers, as I couldn't make no head against, I could go down quieter for thinking, there's a man ashore there, iron true to my little Emily, God bless her, and no wrong can touch my Emily, while so be as that man lives. Mr. Peggotty, in simple earnestness, waved his right arm, as if he were waving it at the town lights for the last time, and then, exchanging a nod with Ham, whose eye he caught, proceeded as before. Well, I counsels him to speak to Emily. He's big enough, but he's bashfuller than a little un, and he don't like. So, I speak. What, him? Says Emily. Him that I've knowed so intimate so many years and liked so much. Oh, uncle, I never can have him. He's such a good fellow. I gives her a kiss, and I says no more to her than, my dear, you're right to speak out. You're to choose for yourself. You're as free as a little bird. Then I always to him, and I says, I wish it could have been so, but it can't. But you can both be as you was, and what I say to you is, be as you was with her, like a man, he says to me, a shaking of my hand. I will, he says, and he was honourable and manful for 2 year going on, and we was just the same at home here as afore. Mr. Peggotty's face, which had varied in its expression with the various stages of his narrative, now resumed all its former triumphant delight, as he laid a hand upon my knee and a hand upon Steerforth's, previously wetting them both for the greater emphasis of the action, and divided the following speech between us. All of a sudden, one evening, as it might be tonight, comes little Emily from her work, and him with her. There ain't so much in that, you'll say. No, because he takes care on her like a brother after dark, and indeed afore dark, and at all times. But this tarpaulin chap, he takes hold of her hand, and he cries out to me, joyful, Look here, this is to be my little wife. And she says, half bold and half shy, and half a laughing and half a crying, Yes, uncle, if you please. If I please, cried Mr. Peggotty, rolling his head in an ecstasy at the idea. Lord, as if I should do anything else. If you please, I am steadier now, and I have thought better of it, and I'll be as good a little wife as I can to him, for he's a dear, good fellow. Then, Mrs. Gummidge, she claps her hands like a play, and you come in. There, the murder's out, said Mr. Peggotty. You come in. It took place this here present hour, and here's the man that'll marry her, the minute she's out of her time. Ham staggered as well as he might under the blow Mr. Peggotty dealt him in his unbounded joy, as a mark of confidence and friendship. But feeling called upon to say something to us, he said, with much faltering and great difficulty, She warn't no higher than you was, Master Davy, when you first come. when I thought what she'd grow up to be. I see her grow up, gentlemen, like a flower. I'd lay down my life for her, Master Davy. Oh, most content and cheerful. She's more to me, gentlemen, than she's all to me that ever I can want, and more than ever I could say. I love her true. There ain't a gentleman in all the land, nor yet sailing upon all the sea, that can love this lady more than I love her, though there's many a common man would say better what he meant. I thought it affecting to see such a sturdy fellow as Ham was now trembling in the strength of what he felt for the pretty little creature who had won his heart. I thought the simple confidence reposed in us by Mr. Peggotty and by himself was, in itself, affecting. I was affected by the story altogether. How far my emotions were influenced by the recollections of my childhood, I don't know. Whether I had come there with any lingering fancy that I was still to love little Emily, I don't know. I know I was filled with pleasure by all this, but at first with an indescribably sensitive pleasure that a very little would have changed to pain. Therefore, if it had depended upon me to touch the prevailing chord among them with any skill, I should have made a poor hand of it, but it depended upon Steerforth, and he did it with such address that in a few minutes we were all as easy and as happy as it was possible to be. "Mr. Peggotty," he said, "you are a thoroughly good fellow, and deserve to be as happy as you are tonight. My hand upon it. Ham, I give you joy, my boy. My hand upon that too. Daisy, stir the fire, and make it a brisk one. And Mr. Peggotty, unless you can induce your gentle niece to come back, for whom I vacate the seat in the corner, I shall go. Any gap at your fireside on such a night, such a gap least of all, I wouldn't make for the wealth of all of the Indies." So Mr. Peggotty went into my old room to fetch little Emily. At first, little Emily didn't like to come, and then Ham went. Presently they brought her to the fireside, very much confused and very shy, but she soon became more assured when she found how gently and respectfully Steerforth spoke to her, how skilfully he avoided anything that would embarrass her, how he talked to Mr. Peggotty of boats and ships and tides and fish, how he referred to me about the time when he had seen Mr. Peggotty at Salem House, how delighted he was with the boat and all belonging to it, how lightly and easily he carried on, until he brought us by degrees into a charmed circle, and we were all talking away without any reserve. Emily, indeed, said little all the evening, but she looked and listened, and her face got animated, and she was charming. Steerforth told a story of a dismal shipwreck which arose out of his talk with Mr. Peggotty, as if he saw it all before him, and little Emily's eyes were fastened on him all the time, as if she saw it too. He told us a merry adventure of his own as a relief to that, with as much gaiety as if the narrative were as fresh to him as it was to us, and little Emily laughed until the boat rang with the musical sounds, and we all laughed, Steerforth too, in irresistible sympathy with what was so pleasant and light-hearted. He got Mr. Peggotty to sing, or rather to roar, when the stormy winds do blow, do blow, do blow, and he sang a sailor's song himself, so pathetically and beautifully that it could have almost fancied that the real wind, creeping sorrowfully around the house and murmuring low through our unbroken silence, was there to listen. As to Mrs. Gummidge, he roused that victim of despondency with a success never attained by anyone else. So, Mr. Peggotty informed me, since the decease of the old one, he left her so little leisure for being miserable that she said next day she thought she must have been bewitched, but he set up no monopoly on the general attention or the conversation. When little Emily grew more courageous and talked, but still bashfully, across the fire to me of her old wanderings upon the beach to pick up shells and pebbles, and when I asked her if she recollected how I used to be devoted to her, and when we both laughed and reddened, casting these looks back on the pleasant old times, so unreal to look at now, he was silent and attentive, and observed us thoughtfully. She sat at this time and all the evening on the old locker in her old little corner by the fire, with Ham beside her, where I used to sit. I could not satisfy myself whether it was in her own little tormenting way, or in a maidenly reserve before us, that she kept quite close to the wall and away from him, but I observed that she did so all the evening. As I remember, it was almost midnight when we took our leave. We had had some biscuit and dried fish for supper, and Steerforth had produced from his pocket a full flask of Hollands, which we men, I may say we men now without a blush, had emptied. We parted merrily, and as they all stood crowded round the door to light us as far as they could upon our road, I saw the sweet blue eyes of little Emily peeping after us from behind Ham, and heard her soft voice calling to us as to be careful how we went. "A most engaging little beauty," said Steerforth, taking my arm. "Well, it's a quaint place, and they are quaint company, and it's quite a new sensation to mix with them." "How fortunate we are, too," I returned, "to have arrived to witness their happiness in that intended marriage. I never saw people so happy. How delightful to see it, and to be made the sharers in their honest joy as we have been. That's rather a chuckle-headed fellow for the girl, isn't it?" "Isn't he?" said Steerforth. He had been so hearty with him, and with all, that I felt a shock in this unexpected and cold reply, but, turning quickly upon him, and seeing a laugh in his eyes, I answered much relieved, "Ah, Steerforth, it's well for you to joke about the poor. You may skirmish with Miss Dartle, or try to hide your sympathies in jest from me, but I know better. When I see how perfectly you understand them, how exquisitely you can enter into happiness like this plain fishman's, or humour a love like my old nurse's, I know that there is not a joy or sorrow, not an emotion of such people, that can be indifferent to you. And I admire you, and I admire and love you for it, Steerforth, 20 times the more." He stopped, and, looking in my face, said, "Daisy, I believe you are in earnest, and are good. I wish we all were." Next moment, he was gaily singing Mr. Peggotty's song, as we walked at a round pace back to Yarmouth. Chapter 22. Some old scenes and some new people. Steerforth and I stayed for more than a fortnight in that part of the country. We were very much together, I need not say, but occasionally we were asunder for some hours at a time. He was a good sailor, and I was but an indifferent one, and when he went out boating with Mr. Peggotty, which was a favourite amusement of his, I generally remained ashore. My occupation of Peggotty's spare room put a constraint upon me from which he was free, for knowing how assiduously she attended on Mr. Barkis all day, I did not like to remain out late at night, whereas Steerforth, lying at the inn, had nothing to consult but his own humour. Thus it came about that I heard of his making little treats for the fishermen at Mr. Peggotty's house of call, the willing mind, after I was in bed, and of his being afloat, wrapped in fisherman's clothes, whole moonlight nights, and coming back when the morning tide was at flood. By this time, however, I knew that his restless nature and bold spirits delighted to find a vent in rough toil and hard weather, as in any other means of excitement that presented itself freshly to him, so none of his proceedings surprised me. Another cause of our being sometimes apart was that I had naturally an interest in going over to Blunderstone and revisiting the old familiar scenes of my childhood, while Steerforth, after being there once, had naturally no great interest in going there again. Hence, on 3 or 4 days that I cannot at once recall, we went our several ways after an early breakfast, and met again at a late dinner. I had no idea how he employed his time in the interval, beyond a general knowledge that he was very popular in the place, and had 20 means of actively diverting himself where another man might not have found one. For my own part, my occupation in my solitary pilgrimages was to recall every yard of the old road as I went along it, and to haunt the old spots of which I never tired. I haunted them as my memory had often done, and lingered among them as my younger thoughts had lingered when I was far away. The grave beneath the tree where both my parents lay, on which I had looked out when it was my father's only, with such curious feelings of compassion, and by which I had stood, so desolate, when it was opened to receive my pretty mother and her baby, the grave which Peggotty's own faithful care had ever kept neat and made a garden of, I walked near by the hour. It lay a little off the churchyard path, in a quiet corner, not so far removed but I could read the names upon the stone as I walked to and fro, startled by the sound of the church bell when it struck the hour, for it was like a departed voice to me. My reflections at these times were always associated with the figure I was to make in life, and the distinguished things I was to do. My echoing footsteps went to no other name, but were as constant to that as if I had come home to build my castles in the air at a living mother's side.